Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, in verse 5, it says, "For just as the sufferings of Christ abound to us, so also our comfort abounds through Christ." There are times in which the Lord has to bring us through seasons of suffering to accomplish his ultimate plan and to accomplish certain things in our lives. Sometimes he has to lead us through suffering. Even Jesus Christ had to go through the pathway of suffering to accomplish the Father's will. And oftentimes we're not excluded from sufferings for a greater purpose. But we might ask, well, then how can God help us? We might come to him in prayer. We might be going through a difficult time. And, if God's will is for us to go through that difficult time, and maybe even go through that difficult time for quite a while, we might say, well, then how can the Lord help us? And what should we pray for? And should we even be praying at all if that's his will? Because, we have to go through it, and he's not going to rescue us from it because he needs us to go through it to fulfill his purpose and his plan. Well, it's somewhat similar to what a parent faces whenever a parent has to take their child through suffering. You might think maybe because the child maybe the child is sick and they have to take certain treatments at the hospital or something that are unpleasant. Or we might think about a child that has to go to the dentist and get their tooth pulled, or some other type of thing where the parent knows that for the good of the children, for the good of the child, they're going to have to go through a certain amount of suffering in order for the greater good to be accomplished. What can the parent do? Because the parent, has to let the child go through that season or that time of suffering in order to, accomplish the healing or whatever else it might be. The parent has to let the child go through that season of suffering, but what can the parent do to help the child? I think the answer is to comfort the child. When there's nothing else that you can do, when the child has to undergo that painful experience, the best that you can do for the child is just offer them the best comfort you can offer them. And I'd say the same thing is true with our loving Father in heaven. There are times when he has to lead us through dark times. There's times when he has to lead us through sufferings, again, to accomplish his will, to accomplish the greater good. But that doesn't mean that he's left not being able to help us at all. This passage teaches us that to whatever degree we have to suffer, God has the same degree of comfort to offer us. Again, 2 Corinthians 1 and verse 5, "For just as the sufferings of Christ abound to us, so also our comfort abounds through Christ." God has just as much of a measure of comfort to offer us as we might have a measure of suffering. Which then brings us to our next point of consideration. And how do we access this comfort? Because, there's obviously some who go through sufferings and hardships and they don't seem very comforted by the Lord at all. As a matter of fact, they have a very rough time going through it and things like that. And you might say, well, how can a person contact the comfort of God in those particular situations? And again, we go back to the analogy with a child. The child, if it wants the comfort of the mother or the father during a time in which they have to endure suffering for some particular reason, the best thing the child can do is, one, trust the parent, and then secondly, lean into the parent's presence and to lean in to receive that comfort. If the child doesn't trust the parents, and if the child screams and tries to run away from the parents and doesn't want to be near the parents at all, obviously the child can't receive comfort from the parent because they're not allowing the parent to comfort them. And so they must trust the parent and they must lean into that comfort that the parent wants to supply them. And the same thing is true with us with the Lord. The nearer we draw close to God, the more ready he will be able to offer us his comfort. As we lean into the Lord, as we trust the Lord and say, the Lord must have a purpose, a plan in this particular situation, and I'm going to actually draw closer to the Lord. I'm not going to run away from the Lord or, reject the Lord, but I'm just going to trust in his good purpose, and I'm going to lean in and draw close to him. Then we are in a position to receive consolation and comfort from God. And so that would be my encouragement today. And I think that's the encouragement we get from this text, is that if we find ourselves in certain seasons of suffering, yes, we can pray that the Lord will deliver us. But in those times when it's just God's will that we go through it and there's no way out, then let's lean into the Lord and seek his comfort. Let's trust in the Lord and his good purpose for us and his good plan, and receive the help that he can give us in that particular situation. And that is comfort and consolation that will measure up to the sufferings we have to endure. So these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.